All right, welcome back, y'all. This is going to be chapter 22, or XXII, of System, Subject, Political, and Private. So now Hobbes basically wants to say, okay, we've talked about the Commonwealth, and now we're going to break it into its constituent parts, right? So the first part he calls the system. Um, Actually, you know what? I read this one out, so we're going to skip this chapter. I think I had you skip it in the readings too. Okay, chapter 23, XXIII, of the public ministers of sovereign power. I just sort of wanted to point out here that he has a discussion of the 12-man jury system and of a legitimate appeals system. Okay, and then we'll move on to chapter 24, XXIV, of the nutrition and procreation of a commonwealth. And so here he wants to discuss how do we nurture a commonwealth, right? And he says it's very important that you provide a good life for your citizens, that they have enough to eat, that their family is safe, that they have somewhere to live, etc. And so here he talks about this is a very contentious issue at the time, land distribution, right? We're moving out of feudalism, where the kings and the nobles own the vast majority of all the land in Europe. And then the church owns another huge chunk. But the people don't really own anything, right? They're serfs. But what we're starting to see for the first time is sort of shift toward mercantilism. And so you're starting to see a new class, not just nobles versus serfs, but now we also have a mercantile class, right? And this is well before industrialization, but we're still seeing the advent of the ship and shipping routes are really boosting trade, right? And it's creating this new wealthy class. And so some of the sort of class distinctions in society are breaking down. And you have a lot of philosophers and even sort of Christian theists and philosophers arguing that things have gone too far, right? The inequality is absurd, and that a lot of the land that is owned by the elites in society is not being tilled, is not being used, and could be used much more efficiently if they distributed the land to more serfs. And so he says that one of the things to one of the things that we have to do to feed and nurture the Commonwealth is to divide the land properly, right? We have property rights, which are important, but with equity. And he says, to every man a portion, according as he, and not according as any subject or any of them shall judge agreeable to equity and the common good. So basically, like, what would the grand citizenry see as a fair and equitable distribution of land, not the elite's perception of what is an equitable distribution of land. Number two, individuals have individual land rights and private land use, except when concerning the sovereign. So the sovereign can use what we today would call eminent domain, right? If you're a private individual landowner and the state needs it for something, right, to build a port, to build a park, to build a highway, etc., they have to sort of pay you the value of the land, but the sovereign has the right to that land. Number three, the Commonwealth cannot be allowed to take a portion for itself because it undermines their argument for taxation. So if the Commonwealth or the sovereign or whatever takes a huge chunk of the state um, and basically is trying to make an income from the land, then this delegitimizes their argument for taxation. So he's saying that they shouldn't do that. Number four, there need to be very clear and implicit contractual and labor rules concerning hiring, agreement to pay, sale of property and commodities, borrowing, and lending and interest rates, right? And this is an incredibly important sort of assumption of the modern economic system, is that we have very, very clear and distinct rules about contracting, labor laws, minimum wages, how and why you can fire someone, all of these sorts of things, right? So we need to be very, very clear about those things so that there's not any manipulation. And this, I would point out, is part later. This is part of Max Weber's accountings of sort of the bureaucracy and the administrative state's role in modern societies. Right, an enormous part of modern capitalist economies is this really clear distinction of property rights, contracts, etc. And so, we're not going to get to read any Max Weber in this course, but Max Weber was a very important sociologist and sort of political theorist who theorized the role of the administrative state later. And then the final point he makes is that the state needs to promote mercantilism and colonial oppression and extraction, right? So he is an advisor to the king. The king has a serious interest in oppressing colonial holdings and then just extracting materials from them. So, we saw all of the materials being taken from India at the time. We saw all of these sort of plantation island colonies that Britain set up in the Caribbean, where basically um, they would just bring in slaves, black slaves from Africa to say Jamaica, force them on a giant sugarcane plantation, which they basically tried to turn the whole island into, and then use that to trade to the United States, the sugarcane, and then they would extract the money back to England, right? And so it's the giant slave triangle really started to kick off right here, and this is Hobbes trying to legitimate his king's exploitation and oppression of colonial holdings. Okay, we're going to call it there, and then we're going to skip chapter 25, and then we'll come back for chapter 26 of civil laws. All right, thank you so much.